Stuff.
So the thing about chocolate chip cookies is that there are so many chocolate chip cookies in the world. I'd say most of them aren't great. I'm not saying either of these cookies are amazing. I'm not saying either of these cookies are terrible, but these are just two examples of sort of chocolate chip cookies. A thin, crispy chocolate chip cookie and a big, fat, chewy chocolate chip cookie. I'm gonna try both of these. And then what I wanna do is make one of these and make one so there's just one less terrible chocolate chip cookie in the world. Let's try the Pepperidge Farm. These are smaller than I remember, but a fat cookie, big chocolate chunk. There's even a macadamia nut in there. I thought these were gonna be a little chewier. Maybe they've changed. Anyways, there's the Sausalito. Not bad. I already know that I like these. I like Tate's. As far as like factory made cookies go, Tate's are pretty great. Really thin, pretty consistent, pretty airy. Crispy. Crispy. Buttery. I could use maybe a couple more chocolate chips. And one of the things that I think I'd want from a Tate's is a little bit of differentiation between the very edge and the middle. But it seems to me that like this part and the middle are pretty much the same. I would like a little crispier on the outside, but chewier as you get to the middle, almost like an ombre of texture. Let's make a cookie. We are gonna make my thin and crispy chocolate chip cookies. The thing that makes these cookies so thin and crispy is a lot of butter, a lot of sugar, and not a lot of flour. So when you think about it, the more flour you're gonna put in there, the sort of cakier and bigger something's gonna be. If it's all butter and sugar, you put that in the oven and it goes bloop and it spreads out. There's a lot of butter and sugar in these cookies, which make them thin and crispy, but also I think makes them more delicious. The first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna cream the butter and the sugar. Creaming is a really interesting process. Creaming butter and sugar together, you're not just mixing the butter and sugar. You're doing a lot of different things. One of the things you're doing is you're actually breaking up the crystal structure of the butter. Butter is a fat, and fat is a crystal. Isn't that weird?
Isn't that weird?
Fat is a crystal. And so when fat is crystallized and it's hard, it's sort of used to being a certain shape. When you're creaming the butter and the sugar, you're basically like helping the butter get used to the idea that it's gonna be a different shape. The other thing that you're doing is you're adding a lot of air to it. So as the sugar is mixing through the butter and it's kind of bouncing around, you have all these little sugar crystals. They're like shooting through the butter like little comets, right? And what they're doing is leaving little trails of air. So as you cream butter and sugar, it starts getting lighter and fluffier. And that's one of the ways that helps your cookies rise and puff up a little bit. It's because there's so much air in the butter and the sugar in the first place. Here we go. Right now, I'm gonna add just a pinch of salt. All right, so while this is creaming, I'm gonna get my eggs ready. This recipe calls for 1 egg and 1 egg yolk. So I'm just gonna crack this guy, separate out the white, and put in the yolk. And that's no yolk. No. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Now I have some yolks, baking soda, I have some flour, and I have vanilla. I'm gonna eyeball 2 teaspoons. All right, so now I'm gonna add the yolks and the vanilla. I'm gonna beat this in a little bit. Okay, and you're like looking in the bowl and you're like, look at all that good stuff. This looks great. Like, You don't need to scrape it. When you scrape this down, totally different. You gotta scrape this every time. You start adding stuff in there because you really want your cookie dough to be homogeneous. All right, so now, here's a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. And then my flour. Now the flour, this is where things get tricky. I don't want to overmix these cookies because if you do, they get chewy. And I don't want them to be chewy. This is how I like to do these cookies. I stop the mixer before all the flour is incorporated. And then I give it a good scrape. And then I add the chocolate chips. That's about 1.5 cups. And then I mix it by hand. It gets all the flour completely mixed into the dough, so I'm not over mixing the flour. 2, it mixes the chocolate chips into the dough, not using the machine, because the machine will break the chocolate chips and smush them and smash them. We don't want to do that. You want the chocolate chips to sort of retain their chip integrity. 3, you're also scraping down the bowl for the last time. So when you're done, you have a completely homogeneous, not overmixed chocolate chip cookie dough that's nice and even. I got a little bowl of water and I'm gonna show you what that's for in a sec. So the first thing I'm gonna do is get a nice even scoop. 1, 2, 3. That's all I'm gonna bake on this tray because these things spread out a lot. Now, the water is for your fingers. So you dip your fingers in a little bit of the water. These cookies are pretty much all butter. Water and oil don't mix. So what I can do is gently press these into little hockey pucks and my fingers won't stick to the batter because it's wet. If my fingers are dry, I'd be covered in butter. And that's how you make those cookies. Let's scoop a few more. We're gonna put these in the oven at 325 for probably like 18 minutes or so. And it's like, it's not even fair, right? Like, I like Tate's. I think Tate's is a quality cookie, but I mean, come on, right? Are you serious? Like, watch this. One of the things I love about these cookies is that they're almost confections. It's almost candy. Like, it's so much sugar and butter and it boils and caramelizes that this basically turns into like a candy with a little bit of flour in it. How do you even describe something that is chewy and crunchy at the same time? This is crunchy, right? But like, for as delicious as a Tate's is, this is like dusty compared to this. What is it? Right? Like, when was this baked? Like 2010? This thing is crispy and sweet, but also chewy. Not a single part of the cookie is taller than a chocolate chip. That is how you make a thin and crispy chocolate chip cookie. Look, click the link underneath here to get the recipe for these, or just go to duff.com. We got recipes there too. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you make these cookies. They'll change your life. That's good.